Some interviews feel like promotion, a quick stop, a few laughs, a plug for a project, then everyone moves on. But every once in a while, a conversation on a talk show shifts into something warmer, something that feels personal, unplanned, and emotionally loaded. This moment had that energy. Jennifer was hosting with her usual comfort and charisma. But the exchange wasn't just about music. It carried the kind of subtext people notice, admiration that feels real. Inside jokes, shared history, and a certain softness when the topic drifted toward commitment from the start. Jennifer set the tone by speaking directly to her guest in a way that sounded like more than polite praise. She made it clear she didn't just know his work, she followed what he did, she watched, she paid attention. She was tuned in, and she said it in a way that felt intimate without being inappropriate. A blend of warmth, respect, and that easy familiarity that comes from knowing someone beyond the headline version of them. She even teased that she watched his show, constantly, and joked that he watched hers too. It was playful, but it also communicated something deeper, a shared world, shared time, shared attention. Not just we've met, or like we're connected. Then Jennifer shifted the conversation towards something the public always listens for with celebrity couples. Marriage. Not gossip, not messy speculation. It's just a direct question framed with honesty. She basically explained that she'd been asked about marriage and decided to answer truthfully. And when she did, the conversation immediately took on a heavier weight, not because it was scandalous, but because it sounded sincere. At the core of it was a quote. Jennifer said she had heard before something his mother had supposedly said. "A man knows what he wants." That line became the hinge of the conversation. Jennifer brought it up like she was repeating something meaningful, something that stayed with her. And in doing that, she essentially turned the question back toward him. Where do you stand? Where are you on this? It wasn't confrontational. It was honest. It wasn't framed like pressure. It was framed like clarity. If I ever get married. Then Common answered in a way that sounded straightforward and direct. He didn't dance around it. He expressed appreciation for Jennifer not just as a celebrity, but as a person, as a partner, as a woman, as an artist, as a human being. He described her as special with the kind of seriousness that makes people lean in, because it doesn't sound like performance. Then he delivered the line that, in interviews like this, becomes the headline. If he ever got married, he said, it would be to Jennifer. He framed it carefully. He didn't make it sound like a casual promise tossed out for applause. He acknowledged marriage is a big decision. It's a serious choice, something not to be taken lightly. That detail matters because it shows how he wanted the moment to land. Not like I'm proposing right now, but like I'm not playing when I say she matters. Jennifer's reaction was telling too. She didn't treat it as a cheap soundbite. She treated it as an honest moment and built on it in a way that sounded supportive. She talked about how his mother had met Jennifer. His mother would probably have approved in a big way. She framed it as, I don't know about everyone else, but this seems right. And then she added something else. She said she believed he was deserving, a deserving man. And she supported the idea of him stepping into that kind of commitment. Due time. If it ever truly reached that point, that phrase in due time did a lot of work. It implied maturity, patience, no rushing, no forcing. It left room for life, timing, and faith. Jennifer also leaned into the spiritual language that often shows up when people are being genuine. She talked about peace, purpose, listening to God more, and being aligned with what feels like destiny. She framed the connection as purpose-driven, not just romantic. The don't forget me moment. Pete Rock and the wedding joke. Then, the mood lightened. Jennifer made a point to include someone else in the conversation, Pete Rock. She mentioned that Pete Rock had joked during interviews that if a wedding ever happened, he needed to be the DJ. Not optional. Not maybe. He wanted the invite and the role. It was funny, but it also reinforced the sense of community around them. Like the people in their circle weren't treating this as a fake TV moment, they were speaking like this relationship had real weight. And then Jennifer pivoted into something she clearly couldn't wait for: gifts. She practically announced she had more gifts. And the way she said it felt like a host being playful, but also like someone who genuinely enjoys giving.com teased her 4 loving gifts. Jennifer didn't deny it. She leaned into it, laughing like, "Yes, let me open my gifts." The audience could feel the warmth. Jennifer explained that even though people often talk about love languages, she personally appreciates gifts and also enjoys affirmations words that make you feel seen and valued. Then she opened the first gift and reacted with real enthusiasm. A hummingbird-themed item. She treated it like something meaningful, not just random merchandise. She thanked him with that excited energy that makes the moment feel authentic. Then came another gift, a blanket tied to the title of an album. The gift of love, Jennifer hugged. The blanket joked about loving to be cozy and thanked him for it. She also reminded everyone she had helped in some way with naming the album, or at least contributed to the conversation around it, which made the gift feel even more personal. That's what made the gift exchange land. It wasn't about the objects. It was about shared memories and mutual appreciation. The music story. How the collaboration came together from there. The interview moved into music. The real reason they were on the stage together in the first place. They started talking about a song collaboration. And the story behind it felt like a classic creative meeting of minds moment. Common explained that Pete Rock had created a beautiful piece of music, and there was a sample that Common initially assumed was Aretha Franklin. Jennifer caught something in the sound. Tucci had an instinct for it, but it turned out it wasn't Aretha. It was Valerie Simpson. They gave Valerie her flowers, shouting her out and showing respect. And then Common explained the key point. Once Jennifer identified what she heard, he thought, Jennifer would sound incredible on this. Not as a marketing gimmick, he framed it like artistic vision. Like he genuinely heard her voice living inside that track, so he asked her to do it. And Jennifer agreed because she connected with the beat and the feeling. She liked the music. She liked the energy. She felt it. Then Jennifer admitted something very human. The end of the song makes her emotional. It touches her. It hits a part of her spirit.com and agreed like, yes. It hits the soul. Jennifer thanked them for including her and made it clear she didn't take the opportunity lightly. She said she loves learning different genres, and what better teachers to learn from than artists like them. 2 different people. The artist versus the everyday man. Then Jennifer said something that stood out. She described Common as having 2 sides. Not in a scandalous way, more in a "this is what I notice about you" way. She said there's Common, the artist, focused, serious, intense about the vision. And then there's Rashid, his given name, more casual, more everyday. The version who lives regular life, plays basketball, and just exists outside the stage persona. She framed it as, the artist version is locked in and wants what he wants creatively. The everyday version is softer, more relaxed, more normal. Common responded by explaining that he has a strong vision for art and feels passionate about music and life. He described the creative process as something he sees vividly. And he admitted he can become a bit bossy during creation, not in a disrespectful way, but in a "I know what I'm trying to build" way. Jennifer teased him for it, but she also respected it, and she ended that segment by saying she was grateful to work with both of them because she learned a lot and valued the experience. Jennifer's tribute. You were joy before the show ended. Jennifer shifted to something heartfelt. She asked for a moment to honor Common, and she did it in a way that felt emotional, deliberate, and deeply affirming. She described him as a man who radiates positivity, not as a brand, but as a real presence. She said that when people hear Common, they think of the public identity, storyteller, poet, artist, someone who speaks truth to power. But when she thinks of him as Rashid, she thinks of his heart and his faith. Then she said what she loved most. He's a praying man, a man of his word, someone unlike anyone she has seen. And she gave him the highest compliment she could give in her language. She said he is joy, her joy, light. And she presented him with an honor framed like a title, a recognition, the joyful spirit, someone who makes the world more joyful for her and for others. It wasn't a messy confession. It was a public affirmation, the kind of affirmation that, to audiences, sounds like deep appreciation, like someone speaking from a place of real connection. When the applause settled and the lights began to dim, the interview ended the way most shows do. Smiles, gratitude, a goodbye to the audience, the promise of seeing everyone again next time. On the surface, it was clean, warm, and celebratory. But long after the episode aired, people were still talking about it. Not because of controversy, not because of scandal, but because of tone. There was something about that exchange that didn't feel transactional. It didn't feel like two celebrities promoting a project and moving on. It felt layered, intentional, almost careful in the way. Certain words were chosen and certain boundaries were respected, and that's exactly why audiences leaned in. Because when Jennifer closed the show by thanking her guests and telling the audience how much she appreciated them for showing up, it didn't feel like a routine sign-off. It felt like someone who had just shared a moment that mattered to her. She told everyone she loved them. She said it plainly. No theatrics, just warmth. Then the music played. The show ended, but the conversation did and single quotes. Why viewers read so much into this interview in celebrity culture, people are trained to be skeptical. Audiences know how to spot fake chemistry, forced narratives, and PR-driven talking points. That's why this interview lingered in people's minds. It didn't feel manufactured. What stood out most was how measured everything was. When marriage came up, neither person rushed. There was no exaggerated promise, no dramatic declaration. Instead, there was thoughtfulness, acknowledgement of gravity, respect for timing. Common didn't say when. Jennifer didn't demand now. Both of them spoke like adults who understood the weight of commitment. That restraint actually made the moment feel stronger. Jennifer repeatedly framed things in terms of purpose, peace, and faith. She didn't present love as fantasy. She presented it as alignment, something that happens when timing, intention, and values meet. Common echoed that sentiment by emphasizing that marriage is not something to be taken lightly. He framed Jennifer not as an accessory to his life, but as someone he genuinely admired and respected. And viewers noticed, because in an era where celebrity relationships are often loud, rushed, and overexposed, this one felt quiet, grounded, almost protected. The subtext people couldn't ignore there were moments in the interview that felt small on paper but carried emotional weight in real time. The way Jennifer spoke about watching him not obsessively, not possessively, but attentively. The way Common listened instead of interrupting. It's the ease in their back and forth. It's the lack of defensive humor or awkward deflection. Even the gift exchange told a story. Jennifer didn't react like someone trying to impress an audience. She reacted like someone genuinely touched. She held the blanket. She talked about being cozy, She laughed like someone who felt comfortable, not guarded. And when they discussed music, it wasn't about ego. It was about respect for craft. Jennifer spoke about learning. Common spoke about vision. Neither minimized the other. That mutual acknowledgement artist to artistry enforced the sense that this connection wasn't built on image alone. The tribute that changed the tone completely. If there was one moment that solidified how deeply people read into the interview, it was Jennifer's tribute near the end. She didn't have to do that. She could have ended the show politely and moved on. But instead, she paused everything to honor him not as a celebrity, but as a person. She talked about his heart, his faith, his discipline, his consistency. Calling someone a praying man on a public platform isn't casual praise. It's a statement about values, about character, about what matters when cameras are off, and when she said, "You are joy." It landed heavier than any romantic declaration could have, because joy implies safety. Joy implies peace. Joy implies someone who brings light, not chaos. People didn't hear flirtation in that moment. They heard affirmation. Why this moment felt so significant in retrospect made this interview resonate even more later was how it contrasted with everything people assume about celebrity relationships. This didn't look like a relationship built on hype. It didn't look impulsive, didn't look reckless, it looked careful. And that's why when people later revisited this moment, they didn't see a performance. They saw sincerity. Jennifer didn't speak like someone chasing validation. Common didn't speak like someone dodging responsibility. They spoke like two people aware that words carry weight, and that once something is said publicly, it lives forever. That awareness is what gave the interview longevity. The closing message that framed everything when Jennifer thanked her guests and her audience at the end. She reminded everyone why moments like this matter. She thanked people for showing up not just physically, but emotionally, for listening, for caring. She promised to see them next time. And that promise, simple as it was, felt fitting because the interview wasn't about conclusions. It was about where things stood. No timelines, no guarantees, just honesty, warmth, and respect. And that's why people kept replaying it. Not to dissect drama, not to create rumors, but to understand the tone of a relationship that, at least in that moment, felt grounded in intention rather than illusion. Final reflection. Why this interview still matters in hindsight? This wasn't a headline-grabbing moment. It was a character-revealing one. It showed how Jennifer communicates care through affirmation, gratitude, and purpose. It showed how Common presents commitment not loudly, but thoughtfully. And it showed how two public figures can share something meaningful without exploiting it. That's rare. And that rarity is exactly why people paid attention. When that interview first aired, most viewers received it at face value. A warm exchange between two accomplished artists, respectful, thoughtful, and emotionally grounded. But as weeks passed and public narratives shifted, people began returning to the clip with new eyes. And suddenly, every sentence felt heavier. Not because the words changed, but because context did. What once sounded like optimism now sounded like caution. What once felt like clarity now felt like careful framing. Viewers began to notice how often both Jennifer and Common emphasized timing, faith, and not rushing rather than certainty. That wasn't deception. It was awareness, and awareness, when revisited later, often looks like foresight. The difference between intention and outcome. One of the reasons this interview kept resurfacing in discussions was because it highlighted a truth people often ignore. Intention does not guarantee outcome. .com spoke honestly about how he felt in that moment. Jennifer responded honestly about how she felt in that moment. Neither of them promised permanence. Neither of them claimed certainty. They spoke about possibility. Jennifer's repeated use of phrases like "in due time" and "if it ever gets" to that point signaled emotional intelligence, not hesitation. She didn't present love as something to rush into just because it looked good publicly. Common echoed that by stressing that marriage is a serious choice, something that requires reflection, not pressure. In hindsight, that shared caution wasn't a red flag. It was realism. But realism doesn't always protect people from disappointment. Why? Audiences mistook maturity for assurance. A lot of viewers assumed that because the conversation was mature, the relationship was secure. That's a common mistake. Maturity often looks calm, controlled, thoughtful. But calm doesn't mean finished. Controlled doesn't mean resolved. Thoughtful doesn't mean permanent. Jennifer didn't speak like someone clinging to certainty. She spoke like someone honoring process. Common didn't speak like someone locking in a future. He spoke like someone acknowledging possibility while respecting the weight of commitment. The audience, however, filled in the gaps. People projected their hopes onto the interaction. They wanted this to be a story of finally healed, finally settled, finally aligned. But the interview never actually promised that. It simply showed two people treating each other with dignity, the role of faith and purpose in there. Language. Another reason the conversation stayed with people was the way both of them framed love in spiritual terms. Jennifer talked about listening to God more, about peace, about purpose, about alignment. Common responded in ways that respected that language. He didn't mock it or deflect it. He met it with seriousness. That mutual spiritual framing suggested something deeper than traction. It suggested shared values. But shared values don't erase human complexity. Faith can guide intention, a key, but it doesn't override emotional patterns, personal histories, or unresolved habits. And that's where the difference between belief and behavior begins to matter. People later realized that the interview wasn't a declaration of arrival. It was a snapshot of two people trying to move consciously. Why Jennifer's tribute took on new meaning later. Jennifer's closing tribute, calling Common a man of faith, a man of his word, a source of joy, was especially revisited. At the time, it felt like affirmation. Later, it felt like vulnerability, because affirming someone publicly requires trust. When Jennifer spoke about his character, she wasn't performing, she was endorsing. And endorsements are not given lightly by someone who has already been through public heartbreak. That's why many viewers later interpreted that tribute as evidence that Jennifer genuinely believed in who Common was, not just who he appeared to be. And that belief matters, because disappointment hurts most when it comes from broken expectations rooted in trust, not fantasy. The quiet strength in how Jennifer framed love. One detail people kept returning to was Jennifer's composure. She didn't gush. She didn't exaggerate. She didn't oversell. Even her joy felt measured. She laughed. She smiled. She showed affection, but always within boundaries. She didn't collapse into the moment. She remained grounded. That groundedness reflected someone who had learned from past pain. Someone who knew that love can be beautiful and fragile. At the same time, someone who understands that public affirmation doesn't replace private consistency. What this interview revealed without saying it out loud. Looking back, the interview revealed several things without explicitly stating them. Both people valued depth over spectacle. Both were aware of public scrutiny and navigated it carefully. Neither wanted to reduce love to a headline. Both understood that commitment requires more than words. That awareness made the moment feel sincere. But it also meant there were limits to what could be promised publicly. And that's where audience interpretation diverged from reality. Why this moment became a reference point when later conversations about the relationship surfaced. Whether positive or difficult, people kept returning to this interview because it represented the clearest articulation of where things stood emotionally. Not where they were going, not where they ended, but where they were. And in that sense, the interview did exactly what it was supposed to do. It documented a moment honestly. No spin, no exaggeration. Just two people speaking thoughtfully about connection, possibility, and respect. Final thought for part 3. This interview wasn't prophetic. It wasn't misleading. And it wasn't performative. It was human, and that's why. When circumstances evolved, people didn't accuse it of being fake. They simply realized how fragile even the most sincere moments can be when real life continues beyond the camera.